Okay, we're live. Fantastic. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Printerverse.
Take a green one then.
Day 2. Yes, we're live, everybody, just so you know. We're live on the internet. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Day 2 of Graph Expo here at the Print Media Center, booth 3867, if you're within earshot of my voice. And if not, hopefully you're watching on live stream or you're watching the YouTube replay. So, hi, everybody. We're having a great time. We miss you. Today, this is our first panel of the day. It's called 50 Shades of Yay, Color Management, Paper, and digital digital print. We have Canon, HP, two divisions of HP represented here, actually, Muto and Xerox as well. And in a moment, I'll let everyone introduce themselves and what they do. I would just like to tell the panel that, hi, thanks, first of all, for participating. I will ask a couple of questions. I've also crowdsourced some questions from home, and I will let you know who asked those questions when I ask them to give them proper credit. And also, we will take questions from the attendees and from the audiences at home watching live. So they usually ask pretty intelligent questions, and we like to get those answered. And I always say, in many ways, these are the most important questions because they're coming from your customers and potential customers. So with that being said, let's start off with just basically, without getting into the products and services, who are you and what do you do? Canon.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is John Thorburn, and I'm the Senior Color Analyst at Canon USA. And that's a technical marketing function at Canon USA. And each day...
Can everybody hear this gentleman? A little bit louder.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit louder now. A little bit louder.
It's technical marketing. I solve problems, develop new tools, and work with our customers. I'm the voice of the customer inside Canon for color management. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Pat McGrew. I'm the inkjet evangelist for what is now the Page-Wide Web Press division at HP. We're the makers of those giant room-size inkjet presses that HP produces. It uses common technology, of course, with all of our inkjet products. My job is very similar to yours, but not specific to color. My job is to help customers who buy our presses then make the most of them. So that often involves color conversations, paper conversations, and application conversations, and I do that worldwide and try to cross-pollinate cool ideas from around the world.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Laura Field with Hewlett-Packard Indigo, and I'm the worldwide media lead for our commercial print products, meaning I work with paper mills, paper merchants, substrate manufacturers, customers, salespeople, and anybody that's interested to talk about paper, substrates, whatever, for Indigo. I work with our application specialists. I work with market development people. My direct responsibility is for the Americas, and I manage our worldwide team.
Thanks so much. Jim?
My name is Jim Raffel, and today I have a split personality. I'm here representing Muto America and their Color Verify line of products for color control or color calibration, verification, and process control. And I do that through our company, Color Metrics. We've partnered with them to develop that tool set. So, like many of the other people on the panel up here, I spend a lot of time with end users, with customers, helping them figure out ways to make color easier, for lack of a better way to put it.
Thank you.
We certainly need more of that. So, hi, I'm Mike Rebusel. I'm the iGen product manager, and I'm also the marketing manager for what we call Xerox Confident Color, which is an umbrella of color management tools that we offer to help customers simplify their color managed workflow. I'm also ID Alliance G7 expert and color management professional.
Thank you so much. Now, I just want to remind everybody, these are very broad questions that are asked because they're coming from a spectrum of people and we also address a very wide community. So just answer them to the best of your ability, as it applies to you. So let's actually start with Xerox. We'll start down there. Where does color management start? And how is Xerox participating in that process?
Well, that's certainly a very broad question. So I think color management starts in your brain. I mean, even before you put a pixel on you capture a pixel. I mean, the color is perceived, certainly, so that's really where it starts initially. But there are a lot of expectations around color. So we really look at the entire workflow, from the creative aspect, how they're perceiving the color, how they're specifying color. Even paper is a color. You have to consider what paper you're printing on to make sure that the color prints correctly. So even before we get a PDF file, that's really where color starts. Once we receive that, there are different settings in color management that can get you really close to that perceived match or really screw things up. So we really are looking at the tools to simplify the settings to give you the best color practices. So we have a lot of offerings built into the equipment as well as with third parties. So,
Jim, I'm interested in your answer because this is really, your topic, so to speak.
Well, I think color starts with intent. And when I say intent, I think about the work we do with Muto, and they have printers that will print on, they've got UV printers that'll literally print on almost anything from ping pong balls to golf balls. Wood, you can basically create wood paneling from just a straight piece of MDF material. They have other printers that do textile work, direct to textile. Obviously, they have their eco-solvent printers. You have that whole broad scope of ways to produce color, but then you look around a booth like this and we see the signs like the ones behind us. So that when I say intent, that's the intent. What's the end result? What's in the designer's head? So when Deb was laying out this booth, what did she want that sign to look like? That's kind of what you were saying too. Color started in her brain. I like the word intent. And then that's kind of the psychological part of it. And then from a commercial or a production point, the first place you see color really in most cases is on your computer screen. Hopefully it's a calibrated monitor and you're using all sorts of good practices there, and then it goes all the way through the workflow. And that's the importance of things like you mentioned, standardization, ICC committee, the G7 group, the Ideal Alliance. All of that is important because those people bring color together and with standards, and that's a very, very important part of color is standardization.
Now, I'm actually going to tweak my question a little for you because you are a media specialist. So when it comes to color management, does the substrate come into play?
Well, as was previously mentioned, the shade, the color, the substrate itself will have a tremendous influence on color.
Can everybody hear her?
Should I speak up?
Yes, please.
Hello. So substrates do have a tremendous effect on color and color management. Our customers, many of them have multiple indigo presses, and they baseline each of their press based on specific substrates that they know they're going to be running routinely, just to make sure each press is consistently color matched. It's a large focus of Indigo to assist customers with this.
Pat, back to the original question. Where does color management start? And how are you participating in the education?
I think that you've heard that it starts with intent, and that's a term that I use all the time as well. It's basically the intent of the person who's creating the piece, whether the piece is a document, a poster, a wall hanging, a piece of textile, whatever it is, there's intent. And trying to map the intent to the execution is a challenging task when you're dealing with multiple substrates, different kinds of inks, different kinds of tools, and the capabilities of the rendering engine to take that intent, turn it into a file, and then turn that file into something that puts marks onto something or weave something. So when we work with customers, we live in an inkjet world, and so we don't have the privilege that many of you guys have of having additional colors to work with. We have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and that is pretty much it. So we have to work within that to try and meet the color intent. That requires good color management tools and good conversations between the intent of the designer's intent and the producer's ability to produce. The other thing is substrate selection is huge, because substrates change colors. They come in a lot of varieties. White isn't always white, isn't always white. Gray isn't always gray, isn't always gray, and opaque doesn't always mean the same thing. The nature of the substrate, whether it's a silk or a rough paper or a gloss paper, changes color. So the intent of getting the intent of the designer down to the substrate is a huge part of the conversation, and no two conversations are the same, because no two people's eyes are the same.
Thanks very much. Kenan?
Thank you. Color management begins with what you see, and then it encompasses what you ask for in your digital production, and then it encompasses what you get when you reproduce color. So in terms of what you see, that's what you see with your eyes. So Canon has an extensive camera division. We pay a lot of attention to helping you to capture what you see out in nature, but it's also what you see in your mind's eye, what you imagine. So that's a part of it. In terms of what you ask for, that's the design process. That's where the creatives and the designers come into the story, and there are many tools and application software with which they can produce files for print. And how you navigate those tools and how you pass color requests from one application software to the next is a big area of color management, or somebody might call it color workflow. And then it encompasses what you get when you reproduce color. In other words, with what you print or with what you display on the computer screen for the internet or handheld devices. So when it comes to what you get, there has to be some sort of a correspondence with what the imaging system gives you and what you expected to see. And so that encompasses all the areas of, all sorts of imaging devices, from inkjet devices for contract color proofs, to devices for low-cost color comps, to actual production with continuous feed devices, digital presses, and all of those things. So all of those different output devices have their own eccentricities, and it has, as my colleagues have stated, all the different paper types that you print on. So managing the technicalities of all those output devices in relation to what your expectations were when you put your design files together, color management is in all those areas. And at Canon we try to have products and services in each one of those stages to help the total workflow succeed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's interesting that Matthew Parker's in the booth, because every month we do a series called UK versus USA, and we do a blogging duel. And we did one on color management, and we called it Who Really Cares About Color? And I thought everybody cared about color, but I was sadly wrong. It turns out that the printers only care about color to the point that their customers are happy, and then they don't care about it any further. Now, my question to the panel is, should printers care more about color than their customers do, and why? And why, if you don't believe that's true, let me know why, so I can bop you over the head with my alien. Go ahead, Mr. Cannon. Yes, please.
So the question was, should printers care more about color than their customers do? And I would argue that possibly they already do care more about color than their customers do.
You can argue that, but I'm telling you, they said they don't. So address that, please.
Okay, well, they said they don't. I understand. But perhaps, the issue is semantics.
Okay.
Printers care. There's no question that printers care, and the customers care, but they're caring about two sides of the same coin.
Okay, go ahead. It's okay.
They're caring about two sides of the same coin. Printers are manufacturers of products, and so they have to respect all of the challenges of manufacturing, all aspects of efficiency, repeatability, and things of that sort. But what they need to understand better, perhaps, is what the meaning of the color is from the point of view of the designers and the people that purchase printing. So there are two communities, and I believe they're both caring communities, but there is a language that they have to learn how to share. You can measure a color with spectral devices and know everything about its mathematical construction, but it's a little bit more challenging to understand how it functions in a total design. So my answer would be both communities care, but they're caring about two different aspects, and what we try to do is bring it together so that we can work.
Okay, that makes sense. Pat?
So I read that argument going back and forth really carefully when it was unfolding, and it jived with my personal experience. So I work with customers around the world who have these giant inkjet web presses, and there's only one thing they care about, and that's keeping that press running 24/7 if possible, and making money off of what comes off the back end of that press. And at the end of the day, most of the communities they serve with high volume web presses have a color requirement that is different than what you or I or any of us who love color might have. They care that their brand owner, their constituent, is getting what they find acceptable. Some of their customers, some of their clients are more intent on specific color than others, and others just want the job out and want it to go make money for them. So I think that the true answer is that all points on the gamut are true. There are customers and printers who really don't care. They just want to get the volume out the door at the cheapest price, and they will do anything to cut corners. And there are others who care about every little nuance, from the frequency variations of different PMS colors all the way through to how they lay on different paper stocks. I don't think there's a right answer.
Okay. Go ahead.
I've been around a while. I've been in the print and paper industry since birth.
They can't hear you.
So I've seen printers change over the years, for lack of a better word. When I started selling paper in my early 20s, I was dealing with a different mindset than I am today. And I think the generational shift is affecting how people get the job done these days. In my 20s, the conversation about color and quality and getting a very good, consistent result involved more or less speaking to an artist. Today, I find less and less art in the print world. So I think maybe that's what we're seeing as well.
My response was actually the people who cared about color were you guys and the paper companies more than anybody else, because they didn't want print looking bad on their equipment and their paper. And the printers should kind of want to get involved in that too, but I'm telling you, that's not what they said, Jim. And I don't mean a few. I don't mean, if you know my audience, I don't mean a few. I mean an overwhelming amount, to the point with my next post, I have to say I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken at this response, just so you know.
Well, Deb, I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective. I just wrapped up serving as a co-chair on a study that Premier, which is a sister organization of NPES, which runs this show, is conducting, and I think it'll be released within the next couple of months, and it's about essentially the state of the inkjet market. And serving as co-chair, it's possible that I might have steered the committee to ask some questions about color and make sure that they were part of the study. And Deb, it sort of tracks with what you're saying, and that is that the printers, the producers, let's call them, whether they be traditional print shops, inkjet, sign shops, that kind of thing, they all have an interest in things like G7, things like Grackle, things like Swap. And they have that interest primarily because their customers are asking them to be G7 certified or to be able to print to the Grackle reference. But we dug a little deeper, and there's a clear finding that most of the producers care about color only from the perspective that you mentioned, and that is, how does it make my process more efficient? How does it make me more money? So it's not that they don't care about color, they care about it in a different way than a customer or even me. I mean, I'm passionate about color, but they care about it in a different way. They care about it in a dollar and cents. How can I operate my business better? How can I produce the work on time? How can I deliver a consistent quality product? That's what I'm finding.
Okay. Xerox?
Thanks. So maybe I'll take a little controversial view to this.
Please.
I would agree with that webinar. Commercial
No,
printers.
it's just LinkedIn discussions.
They are only going to manage color to the point where they get paid for their print. I mean, if they're printing, just good enough color, running dirty, that's fine for them. But what's going to happen is, if they have to reprint that job, then they're going to get burned, and then they're going to figure out, oh, maybe I better pay a little more attention to this. And with a digital press, it's a lot different than a traditional offset press. You're not ink water balancing. You're not playing with Dacia, and you're basically playing with a digital proofer. So you absolutely have to manage the color on that press to even get anything representative of what the customer expects. So we're trying to make it easier and easier to do that without them having to think about it. So
Right.
It's kind of hard to know where you're going unless you know where you've been.
Right.
In terms of color management.
Yes. I mean, I come from an advertising background, so still everything you're saying on this panel is freaking me out, because I just hear that printing is no longer an art, it's no longer a craft, it's a money-making machine. And, I also have to understand that the printers are in the business to make money, but, I would hope that, really, that you would have all said, yes, they should care about color from the minute they get the file in to the minute it's out, whether if it's blue, but they could make it a little better blue, they should make it a little better blue, but it's not happening, so.
I'm never going to say that to you, because the truth is that it's a business and there are economics.
Yes.
And as much as I might want it to be perfect, and all of us might want it to be perfect, the truth is they've got jobs that have to get out the door at a price.
Right. And actually, this brings me to why most of them said they're not so concerned about this, which is that your presses are so expertly calibrated at this point that they can basically print stuff out, make a few adjustments, and then that's it. That's the color that they're going to print. So I know this doesn't exactly affect you because you're a paper person. If you don't mind, we'll skip you unless you want to chime in. But otherwise, let's actually start with Xerox. And the question was, are your presses calibrated for color, and how is that determined? When should a printer adjust them?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I didn't mean to insult all the printers out there that actually run the G7 and print the crackle and run that control strip and measure every single impression.
You honestly didn't. We're having an honest conversation here, so I actually appreciated your comment more than you'll ever know.
So over time, you think back 15 years ago, digital presses, you were chasing a rabbit. It was a very unstable process. We've really refined our systems today to the fact where you don't really have to worry as much. We have inline spectrophotometers that are basically doing the work which used to take you an hour offline. You press a button, you say, am I good enough or not good enough? And it comes back with a score, and I'm ready to go, I can print. And, we do care about color. We do care about the Pantone library and matching the Pantone system. I mean, we're actually showing an iGen 5 today where we're printing blue, orange, and green to extend the gamut to get a 95% Pantone match, where before we were in the low 80s. So we're printing a lot more accurate today because of the tools and the automation that we put in place.
Thank you. Jim?
Sure.
I'll put my Muto hat back on. Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
I want to make sure I
Are
answer it.
presses calibrated for color, and how are those determined? When should a printer adjust them?
Okay, thank you. So that reminded me of what I really wanted to talk about. I wanted to go back to standardization again, because whether I'm printing on a device with UV inks, eco-solvent inks, or the fabric, none of that should matter. In all those cases, I should be able to hit something like the Grackle, let's just use the Grackle standard. I should be able to hit the Grackle data set, and it shouldn't matter what media I'm printing on, and it shouldn't matter what ink I'm printing on. It's all about achieving a common visual appearance, and that, believe it or not, is the goal of everybody up here on this panel. We are striving to create what's called, at least the capabilities with the equipment and the materials, to create what's called a common visual appearance. Doesn't mean they match perfectly. You can't hold them next to each other and go, no, it's 1.5 delta E apart. Well, it's going to be. There are some inherent differences in the manufacturing processes, the materials, the inks, that make it impossible. But you can achieve something called a common visual appearance. And that's kind of what's happening, is that the manufacturers, it is what's happening, not kind of, they've made it possible to achieve a common visual appearance, and that's a combination of the materials, the equipment, and the software. And when you put it all together and you use it correctly, you get a common visual appearance, and all of a sudden color becomes, relatively speaking, easy. And when color becomes easy, it becomes less of a thorn in everyone's side, I think.
Thanks very much. No? Yes? No? Okay. Pat, go right ahead.
Do you want to jump in? No, go ahead. Okay.
No.
So I live in a world where the files that are being printed on the presses that I live with are almost never developed for the press that it's being printed on. Right? In most cases, our Indigo colleagues, they work with customers and agencies who are building files for their press and its capabilities, and they have the privilege and the exciting opportunities that come with having, beyond CYMK and having additional finishing and having white ink, right? All those really cool things. I live in a world where I have C, Y, M, and K, and most of my customers' files were designed to print on somebody else's machine first, either offset or Indigo or Canons or iGens or it's somebody else's. So by the time I'm seeing that file, it's already been through all sorts of interesting customer client color management for somebody else's device. So my device has to try and still get them exactly what they're expecting to get. And so, like everybody else's, we've got a digital front end that gives you the opportunity to set color profiles, set ink levels. It gives you the ability to lock in the settings for a specific file so that no matter when you print that file again, whether it's next week or 3 years from now, you should get exactly what you printed when you locked in those settings today. And there are only two things that will cause that not to happen. For some reason, somebody's not paying attention and you run out of ink, because it's been known to happen that an operator got a little involved and maybe the cyan left and they didn't notice, and all of a sudden the ink doesn't look the same, the color doesn't look the same. And the other thing is, if you try to print that exact same job with the exact same settings on a different media, and then you may not get what you want. But the press, once you lock it in, it's there. And it's going to go, and it's going to go until somebody changes those settings.
Right. That's pretty much why they said they don't pay that much attention to it anymore. You guys have kind of figured out the special sauce. Can it?
I think this is a great question because it calls up a lot of the interesting things that we see every day. One of the things, at Canon, we're interested in partnership. And partnership in color printing is very important because people who buy printing don't always submit work that asks for the color that they actually want. They do. It's true.
I'm sorry, I'm a print buyer, so I just had to bop. I know he's not lying, but I just had to bop him for my people out there.
Forgive me on that. So, partnership is the key in working together. So, it's true, the presses themselves, they are calibrated when you receive them. They produce beautiful color right from the start. And we do that by knowing that all of the colors combined produce a certain reference print condition. And what that means from our side, from the print manufacturer, is if you want a particular color, we know what recipe you need to ask for in order to get it. So the other side of the equation is looking at what your customers are asking for. And that's not an easy thing to do. Most of our customers, when they figure out what they're asking for color, it's based on something they saw on a screen display or something that they saw in some other print example. So there has to be some coordination in the handoff between the print buyer and the print manufacturer so that we both succeed together, so that we realize the color that you want. And, print manufacturers can know everything about how their equipment is operating. We pay attention to everything about how our equipment is operating. That means we know how to keep it repeatable, we know how to have a rich range of colors available for you to get, and we teach you how to get them. And that, you could say that is the definition of color management, in a way, is through that partnership, we teach each other what we want and how to get it. That's what we attempt to do.
Go ahead, please, yes.
I just wanted to frustrate you a little bit more.
Oh, awesome.
So with Indigo, we've made it even a little bit more streamlined, so that as opposed to somebody not knowing the color, if somebody really knows the color, like Coke, we can mix Coke Red just for Coke. So it's very easy. If you don't change paper, you just
But
buy
I
the
like
Coke
that
Red
because
and
you've obviously tested
done
it and made sure it was the right color. So
Yes.
that works for me. It makes my life easier after
Good,
that.
I'm glad. All right.
Yes, thank
So-
you.
Okay.
Yay. Okay, I have a question from the home audience, and we're kind of, led this way. And I actually want to start with Xerox. If he wants to know, with all the new presses and substrates out there, how much longer is G7 actually viable?
Well, G7 is very viable. They actually just updated the specification to look at brighteners.
Just don't forget, these are printers asking this question.
Oh,
so
it's very viable, but again, it's how you use the tool and how you market it. I run into a lot of accounts that are interested in doing G7, but they don't actually want to pay the expert to come in and certify them. So they just say, "Oh yeah, we're G7 compliant," but G7 isn't something you do once and you forget about. It's something you practice every single day. It's all about being relative to paper. So you can change your paper and you can still get the same visual appearance across a blue white point, yellow white point, or a dirty newsprint within the capabilities of that sheet. So I would encourage people to look at it. The approach to G7 is much different on a digital press than it is with the offset press, certainly, because we're basically a digital proofer. So by running and calibrating to the Grackle standard, you're pretty much encompassing what G7 requires. So I would say it's certainly not dead. And if Don Hutchison were here, he would have a heart attack. So.
So, Jim, before I want you to answer the question, of course, but you are part of my, the community out there. Why do you think they think it's not viable? And then, you can answer whether you think it is or it isn't.
All right, so I think that perhaps the reason members of your community think G7 isn't viable is it came out of the original. There's been so much consolidation in the associations and organizations within this industry that where G7 came from, there's some resistance to the group that formed, that they basically create. Well, Don created G7, but there's resistance to the group that trademarked the G7 name and that publishes the standards and specifications. And I say that as a member of that organization, as someone who sits on the Print Properties Committee. It's just a reality. I mean, some things just are. So I think that might be where that comes from. But to answer the question, which is it viable? It's very viable. But it's also like, I met you in social media, Deb, so this is a great analogy. When social media was getting really big 6-8 years ago, one of my really good friends in the social media space, as I was entering it, said to me, he says, "Now be careful, Jim." He says, "If your business and your message suck, it's just going to suck more on social media." So G7 is kind of like that in that if you haven't audited your entire business, if you don't have good both business practices and manufacturing practices to begin with, you can bring in that G7 expert for however many dollars a day for 3 days, and he will get you to G7, or she will get you to G7. They will. And then they will leave, and you will be printing just as crappy as you were before they got there within the week, I guarantee it. That's why it's important that G7 be part of. G7 is essentially color calibration. So that's just one piece, though. So you have to do the color calibration, then you have to do ongoing verification, whether it's through an automated system or an offline system. It depends on the device. And then you have to do ongoing process control, which means looking at the numbers. And if you're willing to do all of those things, those are the people in our survey that I was part of that said we get more value from things like G7 and Graco in the manufacturing efficiencies than we ever thought we would.
Thank you very much. Pat?
All right. So when I grew up in the printing industry, I think a lot of us did, and I don't know how we all wind up here anyway, but here we are. And so as G7, as it came into my horizon and I started to understand it, it was always in my mind an offset standard, and I just didn't pay a lot of attention to it in terms of my personal world. And then a couple of years ago, a customer came to us and said, "Oh, well, I got my press G7 certified." And I went, "Time out, you did what?" Because this is an inkjet web press, and I'm thinking, you can't do that. But actually, when I started to dig into it and understood that what they did is they took the process and they took all the things on the checklist, and they didn't technically at that time get G7 certified, although ultimately they did get the certificate. They went through the process because they had been offset printers and they knew what it was supposed to be and they knew what they were expecting to get out of the process. And then we actually now have probably half a dozen of our clients who have actually done that in their environments with a G7 consultant and taken their inkjet web press all the way through and gotten their certifications. And the thing about G7 is you don't do it once and walk away, right? As you said, it's something you have to keep coming back and recertifying. And so we now have some customers who've been through the certification process and the recertification process. And what we learned out of that was that the kind of client of ours who makes the process, who goes through that, who decides to make that a key part of their messaging to their clients and to the world that they market to, are those who are going after the kinds of jobs where brand owners and agencies are involved, because that is a certification they know and it's important to them and it establishes a certain level of color credibility. So I think, Deborah, it's not going to surprise me if the relevance grows. I think that we're still maybe in, I think it's one of those things that might actually take on a whole new life as more and more of the printers take a look at what the value proposition is of that kind of certification.
Okay, Cannon?
Thanks, Laura. G7 is viable. G7 does spur a lot of debate because it's the color management that isn't. It's not really color management. It's gray management at its heart. And so gray balance is really the backbone of fine color printing, and G7 is like the chiropractor that's adjusting the health of that backbone. So it's very viable. We're very interested in it at Canon. We just put G7 logic inside our RIP, the PrismaSync RIP. So if you're driving an image press with a PrismaSync, you can calibrate directly to G7, and it's an easy interface. So G7 is certainly viable, but it does spur a lot of debate because it isn't the only way to get healthy, neutral color balance. And G7 has conformance levels, so people often have arguments about G7 when they're not really even talking about it. They're talking about how to hit another level of conformance besides G7 grayscale. We think it's entirely valuable, and there's never been a better G7 than G7. What it does really well.
Thanks. Sandy, we have time for one question from home if we have one. We have 5 minutes left. Here she comes. Sandy Hubbard, my moderator at Print Chat. Also, before everybody leaves the booth, make sure you take a picture in the photo booth over there. You could hang it on the graffiti wall, mail it home. Here you go.
Hi guys, you're doing a great job, and if I could ask questions, I would love to dig in with you. Our advanced viewers at home love everything. Shelby's been taking lots of pictures of Jim. Our beginning designers want to know, a lot of these tools are more advanced than they know how to even understand at this point. Are there any tools to help beginning designers learn and institute good practices in color management.
Yes, you could start, and then let's just keep it short because we have only 5 minutes left, and then just say how people can get in touch with you.
Okay. The answer is yes. There are many, many tools for both creatives and print producers to learn how to manage color. At Canon, we have a group of G7 experts. We have a large professional services division, and we have education in all of our field people so that they don't just connect you with proper solutions, but we help you to know how to run them. So the answer is an overwhelming yes. And how to reach me?
Yeah, and Canon.
Okay, so my name's John Thorburn, and you can reach me at jthorburn@cusa.canon.com, cusa.canon.com. There are many ways to reach Canon, and please do.
And their website's usa.canon.com, and the Twitter account is @CanonUSABiz. Pat?
Okay, I'm going to do the last thing first. So, again, I'm Pat McGrew. I'm at Pat McGrew on Twitter. I'm Pat McGrew on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much Pat McGrew everywhere, usually in life as well.
Pat McGrew, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
am Pat McGrew. For HP has look, all of us as vendors, we have to be educators. It's our job. We have to help beginning designers and advanced designers do the things that they need to do in order to print well on our devices. So we have as many programs as everyone else does to do that. But for a beginning person, please go out to YouTube and type in the word color management. You will be blown away by the videos that are out there that can help you learn the basics and become good at the basics. Go out to the Adobe education, because Adobe education is brilliant education for designers who are trying to come in and understand what needs to happen in production printing. And look at SlideShare. Nobody thinks about SlideShare, but LinkedIn just bought them. SlideShare is this amazing set of education opportunities. And look at lynda.com, right? LYNDA, lynda.com is an amazing resource. Trish Witkowski, go look at her videos. So there are all those things. And in terms of basic beginning tools, there are lots and lots of them. I'm sort of a big fan of X-Write, X1 Publish, just for as a beginner, because for beginning designers, because I don't think it's so overcomplicated that it'll kill you. And then if you want to get in touch with us and learn more, tweet us at HP Indigo or at HP Graphic Arts. We've got people monitoring all the time. Tweet me at Pat McGrew. I'll always react. And, don't forget to come by the booth and say hi.
Thanks so much.
Oh,
Jim?
Sorry, I don't have to do that.
I think I like Pat's idea of go to YouTube and just type in the search engine color management.
Yeah.
You'll find that in my Colormetrics life, which is at Colormetrics, COLORMETRIX, which is also our website. Just put a .com at the end of that. You'll find a set of webinars that we've done on the kind of the basics of color. That's almost a foundation you need before you start investigating color management per se. But there's just a ton of resources online. Start with Google, put in color management. And again, I'm representing Muto today, so they're Muto America on Twitter, at Muto America. And if you didn't get my information, they can put you in touch with us. And I think that's it, right?
Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to come today. If you're interested in contacting me personally, you can, I'll try to spell my name real quick, Michael.Riebesel, RIEBESEHL at Xerox.com. And if you want to learn more, go to Xerox.com/confidentcolor. We have an awful lot of information there. You can tweet us at Xerox Production. And just in terms of the, again, in concert with what has been said, there's a lot of information on the internet. It's not all correct. So certainly study up hard
What do you
and do
mean?
a lot
If it's
of
on
research.
the internet, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a bridge to sell you, too. Anyway, if you're a young designer and you're actually designing for print, it's a little bit different than designing for the web, let's say. Make sure you work with your print provider and make sure your Creative Suite or whichever applications you're working in are talking to each other the same way. We call that synchronizing the color. So that's where I would start. Google that, look into that, and make sure you're working in the correct color space and your jobs are being submitted properly. So I would look at that, and if you're just getting started out, there's again a lot of information. We offer a lot of training in that. Work with your print providers. We have designing for digital information, so I'd be glad to get that to you if you want to tweet to me.
Thanks so much, and I think that's a fantastic point. If you're a young designer, talk to your printer before you do anything. It's really the best advice. I'd like to thank the panel so much for joining us. It was fantastic. It was very informative. Everyone who's in the booth, we're having a lunch here in 15 minutes. Amazing presentation, creative presentation from Indigo on some fabulous things they're doing. There's food. It's open for all of you, so please stay. Thanks again for everyone watching at home. Sandy, thanks for the questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.